Today we are hosting Professor Ntaganda Marie. Is a professor at the University of Rwanda, College of Science and Technology. His expertise is in the area of applied mathematics. He has taught many courses, supervised many PhD students, and he has more than 20 publications, and currently is the copier of more than 4 projects at UR, and also is supervising around 5 PhD students in our program, and jointly with the African Mathematical Sciences supervisors. And also Professor Ntaganda has 2 PhDs. He got in a different time, one in Senegal, another one, is it in Cameroon? But he can
Burkina Faso, please.
Yes, he has one from Senegal, another one from Burkina Faso, and he's an experienced man. He has done many researches relative to the human being, so in the applied mathematics. That is why today is going to talk about a client server and web-based graphical user interface design for the mathematical model of cardiovascular respiratory systems. Currently also is a co-PI of the constructing mathematical models for COVID-19 for cases for our case in Rwanda. So in a few days also he will publish many papers on the COVID-19 on our cases Rwanda, and then I hope we will have to extend it to East Africa to get more experiences and how COVID is spreading. So thank you very much. We are lucky to host you, Prof, and then we are waiting for your presentation. Even if the connectivity problems came in, but now we are safe, we can follow your presentation. Maybe we are going to allow you to present in between 35 and 40 minutes, and then we can have a discussion session. Thereafter, we'll have to close our presentation. Thank you very much. Here your floor is given to you.
Okay, thank you, Celestine. Thank you everyone for coming. First of all, good afternoon or morning, according to where you are. Now, I wanted to present the one of my papers. This one which I am going to present has been published recently. I think it is in July. The title, it is the Client Server and the Web-Based Graphical User Interface Design for the Mathematical Model of Cardiovascular Respiratory System. I am going to present the motivation first, mathematical model equations, design and layout, the system implementation, discussion of research, and I am going to conclude. For the motivation, the role of the computer depended on how the user exploit, manipulate, and interact with the computer just through its graphical user interface. Designing an efficient and reliable graphical user interface is a complex task for the software application programming in the area of the human being-computer interaction. Any computer does not implement any user interface. There are specific language and metaphors to use so that the target of the system demand these skills. The graphical user interface is a part of human-computer interaction, and the user of graphical user interface can touch, can see, can hear, can talk, can control, and direct through the user interface. The main objective is to facilitate the usability and adaptability, since the graphical user interface is implemented in the different type of device like smartphones, printers, TVs, cars, airplane, tablet, etc. The task is becoming more multifaceted when it is come to designing the user interface for the health system and the medical-oriented solutions, which must convey complex data and the function through the list, tables, chart, the diagram, in order to visualize on the user benefit and at the global range. The graphical user interface environment allows not to spend more time calculating or analyzing the result. For example, when we are using it to study the nonlinear dynamical system by applying the methods to better understanding the computation and the simulation in the different environments. For example, also you can use the MATLAB routines. This one has been happened in 2018, where the Pedro Harrec, Rivera Silva elaborate the graphical user interface as a teaching aid for the dynamical system, which focusing on the chaotic system. The user interface is the tool, and it is used to mitigate challenges of human being can face, such as the crowd disaster, the crime, the terrorism, the war, and the disease. An overview of mathematical model has been developed by someone who is Herbing in 2018, but before in 2007, Perez Media and all elaborate the mathematical model for the different driving approach to design the graphical user interface, but several of them, they are web-based. Now it is need to consider the user, the graphical user interface programming, and the task is not sometimes very easy. Now our objective here, it is to design the graphical user interface, which it is the web interface for the cardiovascular-respiratory system. We are going to call this graphical user interface ICRSMM. The mathematical model of this system is developed in Rwanda context. The users of this designed ICRSMM include the physician, the nurses, administrative person who need to review the trend of some parameters of cardiovascular respiratory system to make appropriate, accurate, precise, and timely decision based on the displayed result. It is present some guidelines of ICRSSM design and the review. The design of prototype of cardiovascular respiratory system with emphasis on a numerical test and appearance result during physical activity or exercise. This mathematical model can be is basing on the mathematical model which has been developed, as I have said, in Rwanda context. Let me first present the variables, because we formulated the mathematical model as the exchange of a more dynamic quantity. The parameters and the variables, we have the P, which is the blood pressure. We have the PA, the arterial partial pressure. We have the subscript also, which is, for example, the IS to mean the systemic arterial. We have the VS to mean the systemic venous. We have the O2, oxygen, the CO2 to mean the carbon dioxide. We have also the subscript, the VCO2 to mean it bound and dissolved the carbon dioxide in the mixed venous, blood entering in the lung, and the VO2 to mean the bound and dissolved oxygen in the mixed venous, blood entering in the lung. We have also the constant of the model. The Q, it is the cardiac output. The VS, it is the resistance. And we have the estimated, the parameters we have to estimate. There is the gamma, there is the alpha, and there is the beta. Now, based on the diagram, which is here has the 4 compartments, we have the compartment of arterial pulmonary pressure, the compartment of venous arterial pressure, the compartment of venous systemic, and the compartment of arterial systemic. There's a 4 compartments that are joined by the tissues where there is the flow, the blood flow, where there is also in the tissues, we have the metabolic rate of consumption of the oxygen, which is go out, and the metabolic rate production of carbon dioxide, which is enter in the tissues. Based on the diagram, we have the system, which is shown here. There are 6 ordinary differential equations, the system of 6 ordinary differential equations. And in the mathematical model, we see there is the function F1, which is show us the variation of alveolar ventilation. And there is the F2, which is what they show us the variation of the heart rate. And there's 2 functions, they are moderated using the logistic function, where we have the carrying capacity, the C1 and the C2. We have also the initial value of evolution. And in the mathematical model, the rate of metabolic rate of consumption of oxygen, it is moderated using the metabolic rate at the rest and the metabolic rate at the exercise, where there is the constant tau A, which means that after 4 times of the starting the exercise, the human body consume the 98 of the total oxygen which is needed. Now, in the mathematical model, also the metabolic rate of the oxygen, it is moderated such that it is dependent on the workload. And this one, it is like the linear, but it is dependent on also the initial metabolic rate of the oxygen, means that at the rest. There is a relationship also between the metabolic rate consumption of the oxygen and the metabolic rate of production of the carbon dioxide. It is linear. This one, they are proportional, such that the constant of the proportionality, it is a respiratory quotient. From the Crambund in 2008, has found the relationship between the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure, such that the arterial systemic pressure, it is given by this relation 1, this relation 2, and we have also the relation 3, such that there is a relationship between the systemic arterial pressure and the venous arterial pressure. This relationship has been developed in 1998 by T. Michel, and there is also the variation of the alveolar ventilation, which is dependent on the tidal volume. The tidal volume, the constant of the proportionality between the physical dead space and the tidal volume. It is the constant which is called the number of breaths per minute. And we can calculate now the tidal volume using the vital capacity, where we have the relationship between the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume and the expiratory reserve volume. Now, from there is also the relation of the vital capacity according to the sex. If I can say the sex, where we have the female, there is the relationship, and for the male, there is also the relationship. The A here means that it is age, and the height it is the height. It is expressed in centimeter. Now, there is the parameters of the mathematical model which has been corrected from the literature. We have the table 1. Here there is other parameters, the table 2, and we have also all the parameters which has been corrected from the literature, the table 3. Now the mathematical model has been really simulated such that the parameters has been estimated. We have the table of estimated parameters. Now it is what we can say about the mathematical model which has been developed in the Rwandan context, because the data has been corrected in Rwanda and all validation has been done using the data collected in Rwanda. Now, what is about now design and the layout? To design our user interface, graphical user interface, we use two main, methods. The first one, it is to consider the higher density layout and the limited information layout. The first one deals with the tabular arrangement, hierarchical organization, and the graphical, but the second one focuses on the step-by-step interaction and details on the demand and minimizing relevant information. According to the case, there's two methods that can be really taken at the same time, and it is what we are going to use in order to have the accurate, the graphical user interface. The graphical user interface we have, which is the IRSSMM, it is designed using two main contents. The first one, it is the front end side, and another one, it is the back end side. To illustrate these two content, we have the graphic, this one, where we see the user of the system. We have the information where there is also the form to complete. There is the graphic to draw some time. And this one, it is the case of the front end. It is outside of where we can see on the screen. But inside, there is another one which is called the back end side, where we have our mathematical model. And this one can be controlled by an administrator and the medical doctor. The medical doctor, we are going to see its role, and the administration, there is also the role of nurse, the receptionist, and we are going to see their role. But the context diagram we have, it is drawn in the way such that define and determine clearly boundary of the graphical user interface of the mathematical model which has been developed. It is identifier of the interaction between the designed system and external entities. The whole system design, it is presented as a single process. It is the main concern. The main concern, it is to demonstrate the interaction with the user, such that facilitate the user, and how the system it is sufficiently and friendly and responsive to anyone who wish to have the access on it. The system cannot be just accommodate all people who will try to view and access to the content, because it must be designed for the customer's purpose. Now, the system, it is used by the medical doctors, as I have said, and the other people interested in it or skilled in the health system, especially those who are familiar with the cardiovascular-respiratory system and related human exercise, particularly in Rwanda. But the service of this user interface, it will help the users to get the information and to governing of the information. But as I have said, it must be secured. It must be secured such that there is the security feature where they are going to allow the control and the privacy of data recorded and collected for the research purpose to register, and which is requires the order to get the username, the password, and the user cannot, who has the password will be eligible to get into the system and enter the parameters to view the result. Now, the control, it is done, as I have said, by the administrator who can view the content, register the users. He can control all functionality of the system. He can ensure the good continuity by adding, viewing the staff and editing the staff names. He can delete also any staff or any user from the system. This interaction of ICR SM, it is shown by this diagram, which shows the users. There is an administrator, who there is the receptionist, there is a doctor, there is a nurse. Everyone has to log in or to log out. Now the administrator will manage the staff information. The receptionist will identify the patient by, we are going to see, by putting the name and the names, the first name and the last name. The doctor, he can now calculate the value or the parameters and interpret the result. But the nurse must to enter the main parameters which are needed, which are really in our mathematical model, if they are measured. It is what I have said. The receptionist enter the patient to view the existing patient. The nurse has to add the measures, physical health parameters. We are going to see what are they. They can be, let us tell them, they can be the pressures, the historic blood pressure, the systolic blood pressure, the heart rate, the expiratory reserve volume, and the inspiratory reserve volume. but the doctor can generate the figures and then interpret the result. Now our front end side, it is visible, as I have said, for our user interface, ICRS and it is a home page. Since the system it is web-based, for the application, it contains the general information of the system and represent the point of entry of the users who will be requested to authentify to get into the system. And when we take, for example, the administrator, the receptionist, everyone has to enter the name, has to enter the first name, the last name, to put the email, to put what the system, if you wanted to log in, and to put the password and to confirm before he will be registered to sign up. Now, our user graphical interface contains where the user must enter the parameters for the calculation. This task, it is done by the nurse, where the doctor will click on the calculation and he can get the result of the mathematical model after the calculation is done. Now, the back and the side, it is not visible. It is inside where we have the data, we have the database, and it is only controlled by the administrator, as I have said, contains the database which keep all information related to the user, the password, the parameters, the constant, or contains also all kind of setting which can be make our user interface running correctly. The database also is one of the core element, as we know, for any management information. It contains the information of user. There is the users, as I have said, there is the receptionist, the nurse, the doctor, and the administrator. Contains also the name of patient, the measured parameters. It is the entity relationship diagram, which is the user, is a graphical representation of the relationship between the entities. When we see our database, the design of our database, here we have really where there is the names, registered names, the first name, the email, the password, the username, the how to confirm, or they are set, and we have the parameters we have to set, which are inside in the database, and we have to run from one to another one. There is a consultation. Now, to log in, for example, for the to log in, everyone has to enter the name and the password and log in directly if he is registered or she is registered. For example, the receptionist will put her name or his name and submit directly. And after to entering into the system, the nurse will set the heart rate, as I have said, the height, the age, the systolic pressure, the diastolic pressure, arterial pressures, oral pressures, the concentration of dioxide, the mixed venous, the concentration of carbon dioxide in mixed venous blood, or setting or entering of the parameters by the nurse. It is this window, this page, all has been set that when she or he enter in the user interface, he can get this one. Okay. Now for the administrator, to control, and to view, to insert, to delete, to adapt, or to change the password of any user. He used this window. He can use this window, and he can see all. Now, after entering parameters by the nurse, the doctor will calculate, for example, on a calculate, when the patient or the customer is Thomas, for example, Thomas. He will calculate, he will click on the calculate and see what will be really the result for Thomas. If it is Geraldine, for example, or Joyce, the same. It is done in this way. Now, to test our user interface, we have used some parameters now as the value. We have taken the women of the 45 years, and we have taken the height, which is 165 centimeter, and we have taken the inspiratory reserve volume equivalent to 2,100 millimeter, and expiratory reserve volume equivalent at 800 millimeter, and the parameters also which has been set. We have set the 2 parameters for the health subject, and the abnormal subject. Means that maybe he is or she is sick. We don't know. It is to test our graphical user interface. Now, after entering the data or the constant, we have obtained the result like this one, okay? Where we see the variation of arterial systemic pressure. This case it is for the healthy person. We see now the trend of systemic arterial pressure. This one, it is from 100 up to the 120 as a pressure, and this one it is from 2.4 up to the 3.1. This one it is the venous systemic pressure, and what we see, the variation of these parameters, which are parameters of cardiovascular respiratory system, they are in normal range. They are in normal range because we are simulating the case of a healthy person, and the physical activity just play a role to explain this trend. Why? Because without the change of the diastolic pressure, systemic arterial pressure increase without changing the diastolic pressure, and it is increasing progressively with the exercise. Now, but when we have during the exercise, the pulmonary venous pressure increase during the exercise, and consequently, the systemic blood pressure undergoes the more appropriate increase. This increase of systemic arterial pressure is also due to the physiology we know for the exercise, because when at the starting of exercise, we have the positive trend of central venous pressure resulting in the increase of cardiac muscles pump. This one led to the increase of systemic venous pressure for the healthy person. But our result also, when we see this one, the arterial partial pressure of the oxygen, we see the quick positive trend of the oxygen, and it is followed by the decrease, which is, we can say, the negative trend for the risk exercise. Now, but when we see the case of the carbon dioxide, arterial pressure of carbon dioxide, we see it is decreasing. It is decreasing. This one, it is due to the physiology we know also, because the increase of hyperventilation of respiratory organ at the beginning of the exercise then led to the increase of pressure of oxygen in arterial blood. But when the exercise start to be of the higher rate, these values, these arterial pressure of carbon dioxide falls. It is what we know according to the physiology. Now, this one, it is for the human being who is healthy. And when we see the other parameters, we see the concentration of the oxygen, this one oxygen in mixed venous blood, it is decreasing. But the concentration of carbon dioxide, it is increasing. There's a trend, it is in concordance with the physiology also, because the mixed blood is the blood coming from the right ventricle to the lung via the pulmonary artery. And this blood, it is a mixture of the blood coming from the superior part of the body, drained by the superior vena cava, and the blood coming from the inferior part of the body by the inferior vena cava. This, it is rich in carbon dioxide, and it is poor in oxygen. That is why here you have the decrease here, and we have the increase here. This one explains how now the gas exchange activity in the lung, where the carbon dioxide has to be exhaled and the oxygen inhaled to change from the pulmonary artery to the pulmonary vein. When we see the result for the human being who is abnormal, we see really there is a higher value. There is a higher value compared to the person who is healthy. This one, it is also correct because the result depended on the measure taken by the user and entered in the our graphical user interface as initial value, which are needed to compute the parameters of cardiovascular respiratory system. When the mathematical model, it is governed by ordinary differential equation. Okay, now this explanation has been said during my presentation. Okay, now what I can say here, it is to conclude. In short, in our work, we have focused on the web-based graphical user interface for the mathematical model of respiratory system, which we have been called ICRSMM. This one can be used, and it has a different window such that it is offered the way of recording and restoring the parameters in the database. Now, this user interface can be used by someone or everyone who has the skills or who is skilled in the medical knowledge. For example, the nurse, the doctors, and everyone who has the knowledge about the cardiovascular respiratory system. We have seen also this result cannot be computed when we don't have the MATLAB. MATLAB must be installed on the server in order to get the result. Okay, the physiologist, the expert in the medicine, it is what I have said, can use the designed graphical user interface in the case of cardiovascular respiratory system. Now we have the list of references which has been used, and after the references, what I can say here, it is to tell you, thank you for your attention, please.
Thank you very much, Prof.